This is Neil Crawford, founder of Anytime Soccer Training and also the host of the Inside Scoop. We had so much rich information, so we decided to split the podcast up into two. I'm sitting down with Greg Rubendall, who is the DOC of Livermore Fusion Soccer Club. So, Greg, we talked about your background. We talked about your thoughts on sort of U.S. soccer more broadly and how California fits into this whole system. You gave us a lot of anecdotal information, and you provided yourself as a resource for parents and coaches who want to reach out and learn more, and that's been great. And then we began to transition into your international experience. First, we want to continue to hear about your international experience. You talked about yourself as a player in Brazil and what that experience meant to you. That was in the first interview. And then you have 3 or 4 or 5 more. We got time, man. International experiences that you want to go through, and that's really helpful. And I love that you started with being a player, because I know that it also probably informed your approach to coaching and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a fun story. So now we're going to go with some more international experiences. And then I want you to reflect on explaining how those experiences that you had and what you saw compares to youth soccer here in the States.
All right. Well, again, it sounds good. For those who watched the first section, Cali Rise, I went through a wardrobe change because in California, it's about 85 degrees here in California. So, I had to take my sweatshirt off. I'm just kidding. It's not that warm, but I'm just making everybody who's in the northern states a little jealous. So I'll get into how I began coaching. So my first coaching assignment as a kid was I was the assistant coach to my mom, who was coaching my little sister's team, who's 10 years younger. So I'm 15 years old. And my first assistant coach, I was the trainer of Barney's Backyard Gang, right? So that was my team. So through that experience, I was doing camps, and I was in a camp this one time, and Ben Ziemer, who is the president and runs NorCal Premier, it was Ziemer Brothers Soccer. So anybody in Northern California or beyond, they know Z Soccer. But I'm in the camp. He said, "Greg, you're too good to be in our camps at this point. Why don't you come work with us?" And he looks down. And he says, what size shoe do you wear? 7.5. Oh, me too. And he literally gave me the shoes off of his feet. And that's how I got introduced into more formal coaching. So in Northern California, the Ziemer Brothers Soccer brought in a really heavy Dutch influence into Northern California. So my international experience wasn't outside of the States. We had a huge number of Dutch coaches who came across in the summertime that I got to work with, some phenomenal people, but it was all through Frans Hoek and Frans Hoek Sports. And for anybody who knows soccer, have you heard of Louis van Gaal?
Yes.
Okay. Louis van Gaal's goalkeeper trainer is Frans Hoek. So Frans works with the KNVB. So he works for the Dutch Federation. He's a goalkeeper and set piece instructor. And I'll get to, but the course I just took that sent me to Europe that I got back from 3 days ago, he was leading that course. So I've known Franz for 30 years. And so my experience was like this Dutch philosophy, but also, and that's why I say total football, because it has had a huge impact in how we structure and analyze the game here in Northern California. So with that, it's now, December of 2001, and I'm graduating from Loyola Marymount University. Go Lions. And the only reason I went to LMU is because I wanted to go to UCLA, but I wasn't good enough. So I was like, hey, what's UCLA Junior? Oh, LMU, right down the street. So I'm looking like, what am I going to do? And my friend had graduated a little bit earlier and said, you know what? I'm going to go teach English as a foreign language in Europe. I was like, wow, that sounds like a cool deal. So I scrapped together the little money that I had as a graduate. I decided, I'm not going to go into a job right away. Let me go learn about the world. And so I flew, let me again give you the date of this, December 2001. Anything happened around that time that may or may not have shaped how 2002 looked?
9/11.
Exactly. So I'm getting on a plane January 5th, 2002, and I bought a one-way ticket to Spain because I wanted to go to Barcelona and I wanted to see all that. And so I buy a one-way ticket to teach English as a foreign language. Now, mind you, I am at that time, I was a natural scientist. So I graduated with a natural science degree, which is biology, chemistry, and physics. That's my degree. I go to teach English. Do I know a lot about English? Well, I know it's a language and that I could speak it. So I learned how to teach English. And so I'm in Barcelona. While I'm in Barcelona, a friend of mine, Carl Edwards, is doing a one on one intensive with Franz, who's the goalkeeper trainer for Barcelona. And Carl was learning how to be a goalkeeper coach. He was a field player, but he worked at St. Mary's. And, they were teaching him how, like, Franz was teaching him how to do it. And talking back to Franz, he said, I'd done that one time in my life. I will never do it again. And but on the third day of classes in Barcelona, the guy who owned the franchise of the company, Via Lingua, decided he wanted to take over the whole company. He's a South African guy and not one who's high on my list of people I like. He closed the doors to our school. So I'm now stranded in Barcelona with a one-way ticket, no TEFL, no teaching English license, and I've got a month-long contract in an apartment on right next to Plaza de Catalunya on La Rambla. So anybody who's been to Barcelona, at the end of La Rambla that goes from the ocean to the Catalunian Plaza, and I'm 3 blocks from that plaza. And so I'm now I'm just graduated. We're stressed out. Everybody in the class is like, "What are we doing?" So it just ended up being a month where I'm under total stress, but also total freedom. And because Carl was working with Barca, I started going to like Barcelona team trainings. I, went to matches, all this stuff. At that age, I didn't take advantage of it as enough. I didn't realize the opportunity I missed, but I did enough that like I dipped my toe in the water. The program was has had schools all over the world. So at the end, the company felt so bad. They said, "Hey, we will get you into the next class in any one of our schools in the world." And there's one in Phuket, Thailand that like 50% of the students went to go, but you had to pay to get the Phuket. And I had no money. So I'm like, okay, well, what's in Europe? Okay, looking around. And I asked them, where's your home base? Where are you based out of? They said Prague, Czech Republic. Said, okay, send me to Prague. I want to talk to the CEO. So I got a ticket to Prague, and I did my TEFL there. Crushed it. Had a great experience. Got my TEFL, all that. And if anybody's never visited the Czech Republic or Prague, Prague in general, there's a legend, and I will call it a legend, that when the Third Reich came through Czech Republic, the generals and Hitler were on the hills and they said, "Oh, this city is beautiful, burn it to the ground." And the general who was in charge of that front negotiated stuff with the royalty and said, "If you give it up right now, we won't destroy you. But I've been told if you say no, everything's gone." And they gave it up. And so when you go there, it's one of the only major cities in all of Europe that wasn't destroyed by World War II. And so, like, when you go there, crazy little environment there. So you learn those things. So when you travel, obviously, you learn about the community as much as you possibly can. So they booked me a round trip ticket from Barcelona to Prague and then back to Barcelona. But I had a stop layover in Amsterdam, and I had a friend who was doing a study abroad in Amsterdam at the time. And my whole goal for doing this was in 2002, I wanted to be an English teacher in Japan or South Korea for the World Cup. That was my end goal. And so I'm in Amsterdam, sleeping on his floor, trying to get jobs in Japan and South Korea. And I couldn't. I heard a lot of like really hard stories about Korea, Japan, not as many, but it sounded like it was going to be difficult. But also the requirement was that I had to fly back to the States and fly from my country of birthright for them to buy me a round trip ticket. And because I only had a one-way ticket, I was like, well, I got to look for something else. And my friend, who I had chased a little bit down the rabbit hole, he was in Budapest, Hungary. And so, okay, I'm like, okay, I'm going to Budapest. And 3 days later, I was like, I decided, I got my ticket, took the train down there. And so I went to Budapest, Hungary. One of my teachers from the Spain class, from the Barcelona class, actually was based in Budapest. And so she had a lot of connections in the Hungarian like landscape. And so I told her, Jane, I'm coming down. Like, be ready for me. And she said, hey, would you like to work in a soccer club that we have here? We have an English speaking soccer club that's run at the Olympic Center by Banfi Janos, or Yanni Banfi. He's a Hungarian national team captain who played in England, and his wife was English, and they had started a expat soccer club. And so before I even got on the plane or the train or whatever I took, I don't even know, maybe I even walked. I had a job as a trainer at an English speaking soccer club. And so I went down there to teach English, but I started teaching and coaching expats. And so while there, so I had that experience. Now I'm 22 years old. I'm an American. I'm new in the system. I have a range of skill set, but this is now, I've taught and coached for 7 years at 22. So mostly with like elementary school kids. That was my bread and butter, 8 to 12. And so when I got there, guy by the name of Andrew Leckenby, who ran a preschool, was running like the 3, 4, 5 age groups, and he needed somebody supporting him. So I worked with him almost exclusively with the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds learning football, right? So like how to play with them and just the environments we created. It was amazing, right? It was really a great opportunity to see that. And then Buddha Juniors, which is the club. So anybody wants to look it up, Buddha Juniors, and they still exist and they're still going strong. But I got to live in Hungary. I got to see, for those who know a little bit of Manchester United Champions League history, they had to qualify in 2002 by playing a small town club called Zalaegerszeg, which was like a fringe city in Hungary that had won the Hungarian First Division. So they played each other home and away. So the first leg was in Budapest, and I went to that game. Ferenc Puskás Stadium, right? Named after Puskás. So when you see the Player of the Year awards, where it's the goal of the year. The goal of the year is named after Puskás, who played in Hungary's golden generation, the first national team to beat England at Wembley. Wow. So I'm in this stadium watching United, who is my team, because my guy, Ryan Giggs, I was left-footed, I was a winger. I go to the game. Zalaegerszeg beats United 1-0 in this game. So it's wild, right? Like tiny little club, Manchester United, and we're talking Alex Ferguson's Manchester, and we're not talking, our recent history.
Yeah, exactly.
And so and then they obviously they go the away leg, and I think they lost 5 or 6-0. Like it was a bloodbath on the back end. But like just being at that stadium and seeing that and being a part of it, working with the people I did, and because I was an English teacher, I also would teach anybody who speaks on Hungarian out there. Beszélek magyarul. I speak a little bit of a Hungarian. And so I learned a lot about Hungarian language, Hungarian culture, and I'll throw this back to you. Who is Al Bundy?
Oh, Married with Children.
Okay. What is the theme song for Married with Children?
Love and marriage, love and there we go.
Who sings it? Who sings it? Sinatra.
I was gonna say Frank Sinatra or Dean. Yeah. I didn't know.
So one of the schools that I worked at, I had to do one-on-one conversational English on beanbags, talking with people about situations that they would do when they travel. And this was the most prestigious language school in all of Budapest. So I'm 22 years old, and I like lawyers, doctors, businessmen. But one of the things that I had to teach was songs, because the American songs and pop culture was so big everywhere else. They were learning about it. I would teach and sing songs. So Love and Marriage, I would teach as class. Go a little bit farther. They have a TGI Fridays at their train station. So, and nobody knew what TGI Fridays there. Like, what does that even mean, right? So TGI Fridays, thank God it's Friday. Like the saying doesn't translate. So I would teach people, the restaurant, Kusi Isten Péntek van. So that means thank God it's Friday, but in Hungarian, right? So like I would learn things through that. But they have a chain, or at least one shoe store called Al Bundy's shoe stores. Al Bundy Țipru.
That's
And
funny.
so because the Hungarian culture is very close to that character, right? The guy, the husband who hates his job, everything about it, he just does it. His wife who spends all his money, his daughter who's promiscuous, his son who just whatever. The neighbors that they love but they hate, and so that culture is exactly very much Hungarian, right? This is after the fall of the wall. This is 13 years after 89. Capitalism has crushed all the Eastern countries, right? Anybody who had power made money, and anybody who had pensions became so dirt poor that anything new was like they were anti-international, they were anti-capitalism because of the way it all shook out. It was really like very, very sad, right? That whole scenario and situation. So that is my Hungarian story.
No, and I love it. And I think, and one of the things I explain to people, and the reason I'm so glad you went into this level of detail, is we use soccer as a medium for cultural exchange. And so my boys begrudgingly listen to this show in the car. They don't want to hear anything their dad does. And but it's an opportunity for me to say, let's pull off the map. Let's see what he's talking about. Let's look at the cities that he's traveled in. So it's great. Now, I do have one soccer question regarding what you did with the 3 to 5-year-olds.
Mhm.
What would that look like? And what would you, and then even if you made recommendations now, like literally, what does a 3 to 5-year-old soccer session, and that might be too strong of a word, look like?
Okay. Um, at my elementary school, we had this wooden catastrophe of a play structure that we used to play on Woodside Elementary in Concord. It like splinters, breaking everything. So, but what I noticed through traveling is that each country kind of has its own flavor on playgrounds. And so a lot of times I've taken pictures of different playgrounds in different countries. Not because I'm, looking at kids, but like what are the things, and you can see how extravagant playgrounds are here in the US, but they're even different in different countries. So when I'm looking at a 3, 4, 5-year-old training session, it is like a playground. It should look like a playground. It should feel like a playground. And in fact, you could bring your child 3 years old down to the playground with a ball and ask them to dribble through the bouncy stuff and up and down and this and that and kick it up the slide, run it down the slide. That's what a 3, 4, 5-year-old session should look like, either at a playground and you as a parent to do that, or as a coach, creating that type of atmosphere as best as you possibly can with as much equipment as you can. So it's all about manipulables, right? Sensory overload, like let me try this, let me try that. They're figuring out life, right? So you have to create an environment where you're figuring out life. And if you're trying to talk to them, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. You need a 3 to 5-year-old session. You have stories. What's the most popular cartoon, movie? What are they interested in? What are they learning maybe in TKK, or whatever? What are you doing at home? All those things have to be integrated into your story. So if I want you to dribble from point A to point B, I'm going to make you go around all the winding places first before I get to point. Okay, now I want you to go point A to point B as fast as you can. Oh, I made a straight line, mathematics, right? So I'm starting to do it, right? And as you're dribbling, okay, I want you to count your ABCs while you dribble. A, B, C, D. Oh, I got there at H, I got to the line. All right, let's see if you can get to G next time. So they start dribbling faster because that time or cadence is based on how fast or slow their brain works. So that you start doing stuff like that. That would, to me, creating a connection between the cognitive side, perceptual side, and the psychomotor side of life.
All right. So now what's another experience internationally?
Okay. You're gonna have to give me context. You want me as a coach, director, spectator?
Let's go with coach first.
Okay, coach. Coach Greg internationally.
But what I'm doing is,
So
let me say this though, I'm teeing it up and I'm
yeah,
getting some background so that we can then start comparing. So I do want to
okay,
transition into
okay.
comparing what you, or at least weaving in some of the differences
Mm. Yeah.
between the
So
states.
one of the countries. one of the countries I didn't mention was Italy when we talked about all the ones, and I did a coaching course with ACF Fiorentina, so in Florence, Italy, beautiful city. And this was a master coach program where we were learning a scientific methodology of skill acquisition and development for youth players. And you could call it the Italian method. I'm going to call it the scientific method because it's more scientific. It was designed by a researcher, Professor Vergine, who is now the sporting director at AC Milan, but he was at Fiorentina at the time. And when we went over there, we had to coach these little Italian kids who played for Fiorentina's schooling, and we got to see how they employed this platform. I won't go into great depth and detail because it's very varied, but it's a structure where younger players, psychomotricity, so movement skills and patterns and perceptual cognition, everything that I said. The next level up is coordination ability, so linking different perceptual coordination. So, for example, adaptation and transformation, reaction, anticipation, space and time orientation. So they're the coordinative movements connecting brain with movement. Then they get to the technical side. So the exercises can actually all be the same, but the emphasis of the coaching is directed specifically to what they need, right? Like, how they do it. And then they start going to small group tactics, then they go into team tactics, and then they're into the first team. So that's why, you look at Fiorentina's success. And so I would say as a coach, that's what I got most, is to work with kids from another country who were the same age and had the same physical literacy as American kids. So I would say in the US and abroad, from 6, 7, 8, there's almost no difference in terms of physical ability and like what they can actually do. It starts separating around 9, 10, 11, and I'm not talking about I was working with high performance kids, so I can't say that that's, it may be the same. High performance kids in the US are probably higher than high performance kids in other countries, but we just divide between 10 different sports. But a fantastic experience as a coach.
So without going into the weeds of the program, but you threw a word out there, skill acquisition in science. So I'm intrigued. Just give us one anecdotal story, like a technique you would use with the kids with the aim of improving skill or motor skills or coordination or just something that we can picture.
Okay, so does everybody know the dribble up soccer ball? So the
Yes.
QR code, you put it in there. Okay, so one of the things that makes that such a fantastic way to train is that the player is actually looking up and forward while seeing what their body is moving. When you go out into a regular landscape, the player's head automatically drops because they don't know where the ball is because they can't gauge touch, right? Like a hard touch, a soft touch, they don't know how or where the ball is. So they're looking up, and so the manipulation of the ball in a tight space allows them a coordination that you can't develop outside on the field because they just focus down on the ball. Their head drops because they're concerned about where the ball is. So as a parent, the first thing you notice kids drop their heads, right? I want you to pick your head up and do this skill. And I want you to look at me. You can check down once in a while. You can check left and check right, which scanning is a huge skill stressed across the world at top levels. And so you have to practice this at a young age, right? Scanning and sharing. But have them, like, when they focus on that, they're doing their skill. Okay, stop. All right. Now I want you to stop, put your foot on the ball, right? Close your eyes. Okay, Johnny, where's the ball? It's under my foot. How do you know? You can't see it. I feel it. Exactly. So you need to feel the ball with your feet. You need to use the sensory receptors in your feet to feel where the ball is and know if it's a hard touch or a soft touch. If it goes up or it goes down, right? And so that in and of itself is magical, right? So
okay, so now let's go to another story where you've observed European coaches or Latin American coaches or any coaches outside of the States. And then what were your takeaways in terms of the differences between those and what you typically see in the US. And I always add this disclaimer. We're not criticizing. Yeah, I tell everybody. If you working with kids, hey, look, this yeoman's work. So this conversation is not about, oh, Europe is great and America it's more about just a critical opinion on, it's analysis is too strong a word because, that requires a lot more frameworks, but this is more of like a critical conversation about what did you notice that was different with the understanding that it's your own experience.
Okay. So international soccer outside of the United States is not decades old, it's centuries old, right? So because the evolution of soccer in the world was they were social clubs to get activity and for different groups, right? So if you have a favorite club that's international, what is their history? Well, how did they actually start, right? And figure that out because that leads to the culture of that community and that organization. Um, in the United States, we are a newer nation, right? In football, there are some areas that I would say have a storied history with football and like a little bit more cultural. Seattle Sounders comes to mind as a community. Portland Timbers as a community where it was. I mean, it's Portland versus Seattle. I mean, those were big games for a really long time in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in the NASL years. So there's some like story history and rivalry there. Um, in America, the biggest thing that we have an issue with is there in Europe, if you've been assigned to be a coach in this club that's 100 years old, the club has faith that this person expounds the values and ideas of what we want for our children. And they have a proven track record of, we produce players to the top level. Might be 1 million. I don't know. Right. But they move players up along the system from the lowest tiers to the upper tiers. So if they've hired somebody in, there's a trust from parents of those coaches. Now, not to say that there's no critical critique of different qualities and things of that nature. That's not true. But the coaches have a much deeper knowledge base of the temperature of the game and how it's been in that community. Most of the coaches who coach, even in professional clubs at the youth level, are from that club. They played in that club as a kid. They went through the ranks, didn't make it, cycled back down, made it, cycled back down, whatever, what have you. In the United States, the biggest issue we have is, do we trust the club? Do we trust the coach? And I will tell you, there is a huge distrust between parents to clubs coaches and from clubs coaches to parents. There's a lack of trust. And it's not anything other than the fact that if I don't like this, I'll move over there. You're threatening me, I'm out. And so that tension is so educationally detrimental to a child. There's no safety in that environment. There's always an issue. So that is the main thing. There's a trust that parents have there. And to be honest, it also gets to the level of, if a parent who's brought their kid to this training academy, they're a top talent, right? I was just at Nachtleda, okay, south of Germany. And they had some issues with a parent who was being, yelling on the sidelines, and they said, stop. They brought the parent in and say, okay. They go through an interview application process for youth players, and they sit and make sure, like, hey, these are what we stand for. And then they ask them questions and they listen to their responses. And you're like, you know what? This isn't the club for you. Like they turn them away, right? They're like, it's just not the club for you based on your answers. And so they had this situation with a parent. They brought him in and, push came aside and say, okay, it's just better to find another environment, right? And it's not that you're not a bad player, but what we are doing is not in line with who we are. And what you're saying is not in line with who we are. And we don't have that culture here. We have the exact opposite culture where clubs pander to parents and parents are afraid of clubs. and we're all looking for what's best interest of our child, but we don't know what that is. We don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't have any kids, so I can't tell you. But I do know what's best for all the kids I've worked with. And I've seen some phenomenally supportive parents, and I've seen some really toxic and detrimental players or parents that have really stunted the ability to grow as a child, not as just a soccer player, just as a human, and how their attitudes and things of that nature. And I've coached tens of thousands of kids, so I can't tell you like what I've seen it all. I've seen it all.
So, and thanks for that. Now, what about attention to detail from what you have seen? And I can only imagine, having not experienced it, let's say that a European American football coach, so they do have, American football, came to Alabama and did a coaching conference with Nick Saban and Dabo Sweeney and, all these guys. I would imagine that they would be able to show this coach technical details, schematic details, nuances that I'm assuming this coach would just not have seen. But I don't know if soccer is such a different game in the sense that it's simplicity, whatever. I don't know. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. When you were a kid, was soccer your sport?
No. We didn't hang.
What was your
I
sport?
was in South Carolina.
Okay. So what was your sport in South Carolina?
Baseball, basketball, and football. We played all three.
Okay. Baseball, basketball, and football. Okay. I played basketball. I was on the third team because I have the smallest hands possible. I'm quick. I was a point guard, but on the third team, right? I was really short kid, third, but it helped improve my vision and my manipulation. I was a terrible basketball player, much better. I didn't like it because I sucked at it. So I tried it, didn't like it. Baseball. I was the fastest kid in my town, and I taught myself to bat left and right-handed.
Oh.
So my coach taught me how to do a slap down to the third base line. And so because I was so small, I got a lot of walks and I got on base. Like my on base percentage, I don't even know what it was. It was crazy high. And I played center field because I could track things down. Okay. I think I was fifth grade. And they're doing the all-stars. And I didn't get selected. I'm the fastest kid in the thing. I'm on base all the time. I did not get selected because you know why? I didn't hit home runs. I scored runs. I'm Ricky Henderson. And so I was like, you know what? This game's not for me. I did track and field. I won the Bay Area half mile in third grade. In fourth grade, I came in third. In fifth grade, I think it's fifth. By sixth grade, I was so short and everybody else was so tall, I didn't really even place. But I long distance running wasn't for me. I got tiny little legs. It's not my fault. And then finally, football, American football. I can throw a football with my left and my right hand. I can punt. I know, if I was a lineman, I know how to stand. I know how to drop back. I know how to throw because this is what we did in recess and PE and everything like that. I know how to do all. I've never played football, but I was a PE teacher, K through 8. I could teach you any skill. The skills are all the same. But if you were to ask a football player, how do you bend the ball? How do you bend it like Beckham to a football player? Would they be able to answer that? The answer is no. Like, how do you do it? No, I don't know. Like, I see that he does it. There's a great show called, I think it's called Sports Science, and where they take a professional athletes and they put them through all these crazy like lab tests to show how amazingly talented they are. Like if you haven't been to a professional game of any sport and seen up close what monsters of humans these are, whether they're 4 foot tall jockeys or 7'7" basketball, whatever, these are like the specimens of the specimens. And so there's a paper that you can go look up. It is the 10 skills of biomechanics. So again, I'm a biomechanist. I told you natural sciences, biology, chemistry, physics. When I moved back from Europe to do grad school at Chico State. What up, Chico State?
Yeah.
Wildcats. So my advisor for my master program Dr. Hudson. So if you're researching it, the 10 skills of biomechanics is a very simplified version of what you need to do stuff in sport. And it applies to every single sport, right? So you have to learn how to do it. But as a parent, have a golf ball, a baseball, a tennis ball, a balloon ball, like have all different types of balls because they're different weights, sizes, whatever. And a child is ready to explore. So get a whole bunch of balls. And which do they grab this time? Oh, he grabbed a tennis ball. Okay, get a racket. All right. Oh, no, the racket. You're not using the racket. You got to use your hands. Throw it against the wall. Oh, now you got to kick it with your feet. So they just want to play with this ball of their selection. So, so going back to the original thing, like why is it? Is because every child outside of the U.S. knows how to kick a ball and bend it like Beckham. Every single kid. If I said bend it like Beckham to a kid in Ethiopia, he'd know, right? One in South Korea, they didn't know. Why do they know? Because football is the culture, and they study it, and they'll talk about it, and it's cultural knowledge, right? Just like standing in a line, being a D-back, playing forward, like they just know it because it's culturally relevant. So I'll go the other direction. How many baseball players come out of Europe?
And not many, if any. I don't know. See, don't. There you go. You put me on the spot.
If you can name me for the audience out there, if you can name me a baseball player from Europe, Neil will give you a signed autograph of his baseball glove when he was a kid.
Exactly, worth nothing. So the only reason I even stuttered is because they do that. They do that international thing now. So I didn't know if that had one or two.
So where is baseball popular? Even better, any American military base. They play baseball on military bases. American kids, expat kids play. In Germany is where the German base. I don't know where it is. I can't remember which one it was. It is, but they have a baseball team tournament, travel around. But I'll say, if you ask any European to throw a baseball, oh my goodness.
It looks horrible.
Oh my goodness. Like it is horrific. It'd be like, Shaquille O'Neal trying to kick a ball for the first time. The guy has an amazing skill set, can't kick a ball or can't throw this ball.
But let me ask you this though, and this is one of those things I don't typically say in polite company because people jump on you. If you think about this, and I'm going to use this analogy, that the children are raw materials, like going into a factory, and then the coaches or teachers are the practitioners who form that into something of value. Is it a situation where the coaches in Europe are getting better raw materials and are able to do more, where in the States, because and I like that, culturally relevant, you just got to start from such a different perspective? Or is it a little bit of both? Because what I'm trying to get at is, are there things that is there knowledge and exercises and experiences and whatever that just make European coaches better in general? You're doing something that we're just not doing? Or is it they're getting, kids who are already coming with them with a base level of skill and knowledge? Is it more complicated than that? Like, what are you seeing specifically when it comes to that? Like, when you watch a session, are you like blown away at?
Okay, so a couple things, right? So what is the national sport of Hungary?
Oh, you could I don't.
Water polo.
Oh, I didn't know
Water
that.
polo. Yeah, they are phenomenal at handball and water polo. And at every school, they have futsal-sized courts where they play futsal, handball, and they all have pools. The Hungarians love their baths. Like they are look at their records in Olympics in water polo on the men's side. They are phenomenal.
Okay.
You would know that unless you live there. And he paid attention to the Olympics to somebody other than the United States. So your analogy of like, are coaches better? No, they're not better. They're different. I think the base knowledge of the child outside of the U.S. is different. Like let's give a perfect example. Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna. right? Nico Sakiris, young player of the year. These are all kids whose parents were internationally recognized as players, top level talents. Their home culture. These are three. Like, if you guys don't know Nico Chakiris, he plays San Jose Earthquakes. Phenomenal talent. Gio Reyna, obviously, you've probably heard of all the things there, and then Christian Pulisic. But they are soccer families. Football is their family culture life. So yeah, in general, like these aren't exceptions. It's just they grew up in these environments that were soccer specific and focused, and their parents gave them opportunities to grow outside of what their local environment gave them, whatever that is, right? So they're high performers in their zones, but then they got opportunities to grow outside of it, right? Um, your analogy of like, are the players better? No, it's more like it's not tools. Coaches are guides, right? So imagine you're taking a child to a toy store, right? All right. You have 5 minutes to go grab something and play. And that's the only one thing you're going to get in this 5-minute excursion. All right, ready? Supermarket sweep, ready, go. Grab one. You only get one, right? Where do they go? They go to the biggest one. Can't lift it up. No, you can't have that one. It's too heavy for you. Go again. Yeah. And so, 5 minutes are up. You didn't grab anything. Okay, we got to go. So that's what a coach is. Like, it's guiding them through that. I look at the other analogy is it's coaches. It's like going to a hardware store. You need a hammer, you need a nail, you need an axe, you need a saw, right? You need to have all these tools because when you walk out of that store, you need to know what your project is. What is the thing that you are building? And that's what a coach is. So a kid is like in the, not in the candy store. We don't want that. Too much high fructose corn syrup. But like a kid, just in and when as a parent, and again, I'm not going to tell anybody how to parent, but getting the same thing of something that a child likes is detrimental. Let me repeat that: detrimental to their development. If I like Legos, right, I don't need 1,000 Lego sets, right? I need enough Legos that I can make 1,000 different things.
Oh, I'm gonna use that one. Especially, and we're filming this around Christmas. I'm gonna send this to I have two brothers. One of them has kids. I'm gonna take this little soundbite and send it.
And then have them make something, take a picture of it, make them take it apart and make something else. What does your mind create? You created a tiny little doggy. Oh, that's cool. Done. Now that's this big skyscraper building. Oh, that's cool. Break it down. So you're building and they're thinking like, okay, this piece goes like this and this. Oh, that's what it is. And if you have a creative kid, you can have them like, oh, look at Old Trafford. Let's build Old Trafford. But you don't have a plan for Old Trafford. You have to go do some research. You got to take a picture. Okay, it looks like this. But now you're developing the creativity of the child's mind to accomplish this, right? And when you ask a child to draw a dog for the first time, pretty rudimentary. But if they have practice, they can do it, closing their eyes, just freehand, right? So these are the things that as a teacher, these are the skills that teachers are teaching. And in school, at least when I was a kid, I don't know so much. My wife is a first grade teacher, so she can tell you her class, she works in a Title I school in Sacramento, Alexander Twilight. I was at their Christmas event last night, or like holiday event yesterday. A very diverse, very difficult part of Sacramento. And what she gives more hugs and affirmations than she can actually teach, because that's what the needs of the students are. So,
absolutely. All right. So what we're going to do is take a quick break, and then we're going to conclude with a few more minutes of part 3. And then we're going to use this, because I thought this was perfect, a good segue into the final piece of helping parents understand their club, asking some probing and intelligent questions, being ready to listen. How can they digest and understand that information? And any other tidbits you have in this little mini series we're calling the perfect soccer parent, which of course there is no perfect soccer parent, but I think it'll be fun. Guys, we'll be right back. I'll see you next week on the show.